my story. Said the June. You don't know my story. The anguish and the guilt that consumed me. Grateful I can tell it. For no more shall the shackles condemn me. You don't know the story. You just don't know. For if you did, you would lift up your hands.
Hello, this is Fred Hinton from the Fred Hinton Show. I am in the office of Robert Taylor. He's a former prosecutor, former Hillsborough County deputy. Now he's practicing law, has experience for over 24 years of his own. He practiced criminal, he practiced civil, and he also practiced family law. Welcome, Robert, to the Fred Hinton Show. Thank you for having me in your office. As you know, we're in a hot debate topic with the George Zimmerman case. And a lot of people are confused about what happened, how did he get off. A lot of us feel that he never should have got off. Some of us feel that race played a big topic in it, that it's dividing us, and our city is pretty much in an uproar where we have a lot of Trayvon rallies going on. As we know, Zimmerman also had a lot of supporters, even though they didn't show their face, but he was able to raise a good amount of money. The money came from somewhere. So as an attorney that practiced criminal law, what is your take on the verdict?
Okay. I think the verdict was unjust, and Zimmerman was allowed to walk away from having taken someone's life. Now, I believe that he was overcharged. He should never have been charged with second-degree murder. He should have been charged with manslaughter, in my opinion. Manslaughter is a lesser included offense of murder, and the elements that have to be proved in a manslaughter case are not as stringent as they are in proving a murder case. Let's talk about, for a second, with what can I talk about the stand your ground law?
I would definitely, because that's where a lot of us is very much confused. I know me, myself, when I hear I didn't know anything about the stand your ground law until this case came about. What exactly is stand your ground law?
Stand your ground law essentially says that you do not have an obligation to retreat before using deadly force if you have a reasonable fear or a reasonable expectation of fear, a reasonable expectation of bodily harm or death. Now, the problem is, what is a reasonable expectation? If I hit you in the nose or hit you in the face, does that constitute a reasonable expectation of serious bodily harm or death? As we know in Zimmerman, the fact that he was allegedly hit in the face several times, and allegedly his head was hit on the concrete, that constituted a reasonable expectation of bodily harm or death. Well, in my opinion, it's very, very unclear, and the stand your ground law needs to be struck down. Florida was actually the first state to enact the stand your ground law. Since then, over 20 other states have now enacted stand your ground laws. The National Rifle Association is primarily behind the stand your ground laws. And so we now as lawyers, defense attorneys, are using the stand your ground law to get people off when they shouldn't be off. Defense attorneys who are aware of the inequity of the stand your ground law will only use it when it really applies. But in the Zimmerman case versus Trayvon, it does not and should not have been applied.
Let me get this straight, Mr. Taylor. If I leave out of the store, someone comes up to me and picks a fight, and if I feel with reason, my own personal reason, if I wanted to, I could shoot him and say I was standing my ground.
Essentially, that's what it says. If you believe this person now has put you in reasonable fear of your life or imminent bodily harm, you can pull out a gun and shoot them.
Key word, my reason. So what may be reason for me may not be reason for you.
Correct.
And also, if I got my concealed weapons permit, I have my concealed weapon permit, I have my firearm on me. He doesn't even have to have a firearm, but the fact that I feel reasonable that, he can beat me up at the end of the day, I can shoot him based on the stand your ground law.
That's correct.
Wow. Whatever happened to self-defense of where you only can match force with force? That's what I was under the assumption of. That's what self-defense meant. That it's almost kind of reminding me of rock, paper, scissors. If someone picked up a bat, I only could pick up basically a bat. That kind of thing. Or if they picked up a knife, then I can pick up a gun. But it had to be something that matched self-defense.
Right.
What happened with that?
Stand your ground basically gutted what we knew as the self-defense defense. You now only have to have a reasonable fear of imminent bodily harm or serious bodily harm. So in the Trayvon Martin case, George Zimmerman alleged that essentially the fist of Trayvon Martin caused him to believe that he was going to suffer imminent or bodily harm.
I keep hearing all over the internet and everywhere that he was carrying Skittles and an iced tea bottle.
Correct.
So the iced tea bottle didn't come into play at all, where he didn't say, well, he had a bottle that I was scared of that or any of that. It was strictly Knuckle City at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it was Knuckle City and the alleged assertion that Trayvon was banging his head on the concrete.
Mr. Taylor, when I look at Trayvon, I look at him and I say that could have been my little brother. Do you have any kids, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I have a son, as a matter of fact.
So Trayvon could have been your son.
That's correct.
Wearing that, because a lot of kids wear hoodies, and that night it was raining. So for him to wear a hoodie, that wasn't out of the norm.
Correct.
At all. So as an African American male, and you have an African American son, what advice would you give a young boy or even at this point another man? Because as you can see, this case has basically turned a lot of things upside down. Where we hope it doesn't set us back as people, but as you can see, I don't want to call it the race card, but as an African American, we see different things in it that we can't help but feel like we're going backwards.
Right.
What advice would you give me that I can pass down to my son and also to other African Americans, not just African Americans, but to Hispanic kids or to Asian kids? Because at the end of the day, we all face some type of stereotype, but it goes back to the original question. What advice would you give us?
We are in a quandary. If you walk too slow, you must be up to no good. If you walk too fast, then you must be running away from something that you've done. So what do? I would suggest that African American young men, Hispanic young men, do as they have been doing. I would suggest also that they get with their parents, write the governor, write lawyers, write their legislators to get the stand your ground law changed. Now, let me touch just for a second on the race card. Allegedly, race did not play a factor or did not play a role in this case. Many people are unaware of a young lady by the name of Marissa Alexander. Marissa Alexander is a black young woman who resided in Jacksonville. She had been in an abusive relationship, and her former husband, as I understand it, was coming to beat her up again. And Marissa was in fear of what? Imminent bodily harm, or she had a reasonable fear of imminent bodily harm. She fired a warning shot in the air into the ceiling, essentially. And Marissa was not allowed to use the stand your ground defense. And she was sentenced to 20 years.
Let's get this clear, Mr. Tiller. Doesn't mean to cut you off, but she fired a warning shot, so he's still alive.
Yep.
And he's also been abusive to her. So basically, it almost seems that the stand your ground law works when it want to work.
Correct.
When it benefits someone else.
Yes, and not black people.
I also see that one of the things that you practice is civil rights. Would you like to touch on the civil rights laws that you practice?
Sure. I do a lot of work in the area of employment discrimination. That would be the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on race, sex, national origin. I also handle cases where law enforcement has used excessive force in their arrests and entering homes, basically in the way they treat people.
And based on your past experience of being a Hillsborough County deputy, you have the expertise, you have the knowledge, you know what they are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
That's correct.
Also, Mr. Taylor, I also see that you practice family law. What are some of the family law cases? You do child support, you do divorce. What are the areas you practice in that arena?
Essentially, we cover the gamut. We handle dissolutions of marriage. We handle child support. We handle the rights of the various parties, what they're entitled to. We deal with guardianships. We deal with adoptions. Essentially, whatever can be considered family law, we deal with it.
So if someone wanted to hire you for criminal case, family case, or civil case, could you give our listening audience your information?
Absolutely. My phone number is 813-304-2264. Again, that's 813-304-2264. I'm located at 10014 North Dale Mabry Highway in Tampa, on the corner of Dale Mabry and Linebaugh.
If you have been arrested, you have been treated unfairly, or if you feel that you just want to be knowledgeable on your rights, give Mr. Taylor a call. As you can see, he understands the law by him being a former prosecutor. He's also been a former Hillsborough County deputy. He has over 25 years of practicing law. He's also a father of an African-American child. So he understands our point of view. He understands what we're going through. And he's here. He has a passion for the people. He also has a passion for law. This is Fred Hinton from the Fred Hinton Show. Thank you for tuning in. And hopefully something that was said can educate you, empower you, and inspire you. Remember, God loves you and he has a plan for you.